Most people don't fail because they lack opportunity. They fail because they think like employees in a world that rewards ownership. They fail because they believe millionaires are different, smarter, luckier, connected, privileged, and that belief quietly becomes a ceiling. In this full cinematic audiobook, The 5 Mindset Shifts That Create Millionaires, you are going to discover something uncomfortable and powerful. Millionaires are not created by income, they are created by identity. Over the next chapters, we will break down the 5 mindset shifts that repeatedly show up in people who build wealth, not once, but consistently. We will explore why thinking bigger is not enough, why action without identity collapses, why discipline beats motivation every time, why time is more valuable than money, and why most people sabotage abundance before they ever touch it. This is not financial advice. This is psychological reconstruction, because the real gap between you and wealth is not money. It's mental structure. Here's your first punchline. You don't become a millionaire by making millions. You become a millionaire by thinking in millions before you ever see the money. Let that settle. This audiobook will challenge you. Some ideas will feel uncomfortable. That's good. If nothing here challenges you, nothing here will change you. So lean in. Because the first shift is not about business. It's about belief. Chapter 2. Shift number 1. Identity before income. Most people try to change their bank account without changing their self-image. They want bigger results, but they carry smaller identities, and identity always wins. You can hustle all you want. You can grind 16 hours a day. You can read every business book on the shelf. But if your internal identity says, "I'm just trying to survive," you will unconsciously sabotage success, because success feels unfamiliar, and the brain protects familiarity more than it pursues prosperity. Read that again in your mind. The brain protects familiarity more than it pursues prosperity. That's why people win the lottery and lose it. That's why people get promotions and shrink in confidence. That's why entrepreneurs scale fast, then implode. Income grew faster than identity, and identity pulled them back. Millionaires don't think, "How do I make more money?" They think, "Who must I become to handle more money?" Different question, different trajectory. In 2025, with AI reshaping industries, automation replacing routine jobs, and remote work blurring boundaries, your identity matters more than ever, because opportunities are expanding, but so are distractions. If you still see yourself as someone trying to get by, you will treat opportunities cautiously. If you see yourself as a creator of value, you will treat opportunities strategically. Identity determines posture. Posture determines decisions. Decisions determine outcomes. Now ask yourself honestly, when you walk into a room, virtual or physical, do you see yourself as a participant or as a value creator? There is a difference. Participants wait. Value creators observe, assess, and contribute. Participants consume. Value creators build. Participants hope. Value creators execute. And here's the secret no one tells you. Identity is a choice, not a label given at birth, not a degree, not a job title, a choice. You can choose today to see yourself differently, but that choice requires evidence, which means your habits must align. If you want the identity of a disciplined person, you must act disciplined daily. If you want the identity of someone wealthy, you must think long-term daily. Identity is not declared, it's reinforced. So here's your challenge. For the next 30 days, Stop asking, how can I make more? Start asking, how would a millionaire think about this decision? When you're about to spend impulsively, when you're about to procrastinate, when you're about to avoid a hard conversation, pause, ask, decide differently. Because identity grows through micro decisions. And here's another truth. The world does not reward need. It rewards value. You may need more money, but the market asks one question. What problem do you solve? Identity shift number 1. Stop seeing yourself as someone who needs. Start seeing yourself as someone who creates. When that shift locks in, income becomes a byproduct. But we are only getting started, because identity without action is fantasy. And that leads us to the second shift, one that separates dreamers from builders. And it might challenge everything you believe about motivation. Dear friend, allow me to interrupt for a moment. Our team is currently working on improving our channel and videos. May we ask you, dear viewer, what you like about our videos? Or perhaps what you would like to see in our videos? Perhaps a different video format or a different format for presenting audiobooks? Be skeptical. Your skeptical expert opinion can help us improve our videos even more. Thank you very much. We look forward to your comments under the video. Let's continue. Chapter 3. Shift number 2. Action before motivation. Most people are waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel inspired. And while they wait, someone less talented moves. This is one of the most dangerous myths in personal development. That motivation creates action. It doesn't. Action creates motivation. You don't feel your way into discipline. You discipline your way into feeling powerful. In 2025, we live in a world addicted to dopamine. Short videos, instant likes, quick rewards, micro-entertainment. Your brain is being trained daily to seek stimulation without effort, and that rewires you. You begin to believe you must feel it before you do it. But millionaires understand something deeper. Motion precedes emotion. They don't wake up inspired every day. They wake up committed. Commitment is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It says, I execute whether I feel like it or not. Now think about this carefully. If you only act when you feel motivated, you have outsourced your future to your mood, and mood is unstable. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days you'll feel tired. Some days confident. Other days doubtful. If your output fluctuates with your mood, your income will fluctuate with your mood. Millionaires remove mood from the equation. They create non-negotiables. A time they wake up, a time they work, a system they follow, a standard they protect. Not because they're robots, but because they understand something simple. Consistency compounds. Let that land. Consistency compounds. If you show up 80% of the time, you will outperform the genius who shows up 20% of the time. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are not lacking opportunity. They are lacking sustained action. You don't need a new idea. You need more repetitions of the right behavior. Think about someone who goes to the gym. The first week is uncomfortable. The second week is hard. The third week still hurts. But after 30 days, momentum begins. After 90 days, identity shifts. After a year, transformation is visible. Motivation did not create that body. Repetition did. The same is true in business, in relationships, in communication, in investing, in learning, in leadership. Now here's where it gets deeper. Action builds confidence. Confidence builds speed. Speed builds opportunity. Opportunity builds income, but it all starts with action, not overthinking, not planning endlessly, not waiting for the perfect moment. You must move, even imperfectly. And here is your second punchline. Clarity does not come from thinking, clarity comes from doing. You learn more from one uncomfortable attempt than from 10 hours of theory. Millionaires experiment, they test, they iterate, they fail, they refine, while others analyze. Overthinking is disguised fear, and fear dressed as logic is still fear. So ask yourself, what have you been postponing? A call, a project, a proposal, a skill, a pivot? What would happen if you acted today? Not dramatically, but decisively. Even one bold move per week changes your trajectory. But here's where most people get stuck. They act for a few days, then stop, because they expect immediate results, which leads to the third mindset shift. And this one might offend you, because it challenges how you see time itself. Mate, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 4, Shift Number 3, Long-Term Thinking in a Short-Term World. We live in an era of immediacy, same-day delivery, instant streaming, one-click purchases, AI-generated answers in seconds. And slowly, without realizing it, we begin to expect life to work the same way. But wealth does not respond to urgency. It responds to patience. This is the third mindset shift that creates millionaires. They think in decades while others think in days. The average person asks, how fast can I make money? The millionaire asks, how can I build something that makes money for 20 years? Different horizon, different behavior. Let's slow this down. Imagine two people start a business today. The first wants quick wins. They chase trends. They jump platforms. They pivot constantly. They panic at slow months. The second builds infrastructure. They focus on brand, systems, skill depth, relationships, reputation. 5 years later, the first is exhausted. The second is compounding because time rewards consistency, not urgency. In 2025, this mindset is even more critical. AI tools allow anyone to start quickly. Social media allows anyone to appear successful. Crypto, fintech, and digital startups promise rapid returns. But here's what most people miss. Fast money without structure disappears. Slow money with structure multiplies. Millionaires play the long game. They don't optimize for applause. They optimize for durability. Now ask yourself honestly, are you building something that could last 10 years? Or are you chasing what feels exciting this month? There is nothing wrong with ambition, but ambition without horizon creates burnout. And burnout destroys potential. Here is the third punchline. Short-term intensity feels productive. Long-term consistency builds wealth. You don't need explosive progress. You need steady direction. Even investing works this way. Small, consistent contributions, compounded over time, outperform sporadic large bursts. The same applies to skill. If you study 1 hour a day for 5 years, you will surpass the person who binge studies for 2 months and quits. If you build relationships intentionally for years, opportunities find you. If you improve your communication consistently, influence compounds. Time is not your enemy. Impatience is. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Most people sabotage long-term growth because they want validation now. They want proof. They want visible success. They want recognition. But the most valuable growth happens in silence, in private discipline, in unseen repetition, in boring consistency. Millionaires are willing to look average temporarily, to become exceptional permanently. That is a rare trait, and rarity is valuable. Now let's connect this to your daily life. When you choose to save instead of overspend, you are thinking long-term. When you choose to learn instead of scroll, you are thinking long-term. When you choose to invest in skill instead of entertainment, you are thinking long-term. Every small decision reveals your time horizon, and your time horizon predicts your wealth horizon. If this insight is hitting you, pause, reflect. What are you building right now that will still matter in 2035? If nothing comes to mind, that's your signal. Now here's something powerful. When you extend your timeline, pressure decreases. You stop panicking over slow months. You stop comparing your year 1 to someone's year 10. You stop measuring progress weekly, and you start measuring it annually. That shift alone changes behavior, but thinking long-term requires another internal upgrade. Because once you stop chasing quick wins, you must confront how you value your most limited resource. And that brings us to the fourth shift, the one that separates wealthy thinkers from busy people. It's not about money, it's about time. Chapter 5, shift number 4, valuing time. Over money, here is a truth that will rearrange your priorities if you let it. Poor thinkers chase money. Wealthy thinkers protect time. Money can be earned back. Time cannot. Yet most people trade their best hours for low-leverage tasks. They obsess over saving $10 while wasting 10 years. They argue over discounts while neglecting skill development. They clip coupons, but don't cultivate capability. Now, let's go deeper. If you value money more than time, you will always choose what's cheaper over what's transformative. You'll choose the lower-priced course instead of the higher-quality mentor. You'll choose comfort instead of skill building. You'll choose security instead of opportunity. But millionaires ask a different question. How does this decision affect my time? Because time is the ultimate asset. In 2025, this shift is more critical than ever. You can automate tasks, outsource processes, leverage AI tools, but you cannot outsource growth. You cannot automate discipline. You cannot delegate vision. If you waste your time on distractions, no software can fix that. Now imagine this. 2 people earn the same salary. One spends evenings learning high-income skills. The other spends evenings scrolling. 5 years later, one has options. The other has frustration. Same income, different time usage, different life. Time magnifies habits. It exposes priorities, and it reveals identity. Here's the fourth punchline. Your calendar is a mirror of your future. Look at how you spend your week. Meetings, entertainment, conversations, learning, exercise, rest. Your future is hidden in your routine. If your schedule is reactive, your life will be reactive. Millionaires design their time intentionally. They protect deep work hours. They eliminate low-value tasks. They avoid energy leaks. They understand something powerful. Every yes costs time, and time is finite. Now here's a challenge. For the next 7 days, track your time honestly. Not what you think you did, what you actually did. You might discover hours lost in distraction, and that awareness alone can change your trajectory. But value in time isn't only about productivity. It's about leverage. Leverage means doing something once that pays repeatedly. Building a digital asset, creating intellectual property, investing strategically, developing a skill that compounds. Millionaires focus on leverage. Employees focus on effort. Effort trades hours for income. Leverage multiplies hours. And here's where this becomes emotional. Many people stay busy because it feels safe. Busy gives the illusion of progress. But activity without leverage is exhaustion, and exhaustion is not wealth. You must begin asking, what am I building that works when I don't? That question shifts everything. Are you building systems, or are you just completing tasks? Are you investing in assets, or are you consuming liabilities? Are you developing influence, or are you scrolling through it? Time forces truth. And here's something most people never consider. When you protect your time, you protect your mental clarity. When you protect your mental clarity, you make better decisions. Better decisions compound into better outcomes, and outcomes shape identity. It all connects. Now imagine your life 5 years from now if you valued time ruthlessly. You said no more often. You eliminated distractions. You invested in skills. You protected focus. You built leverage. Who would you be? That version of you is not fantasy. It's discipline applied to hours. But here's the tension. When you begin valuing time, you may have to separate from environments that do not. Friends who waste weekends. Colleagues who normalize mediocrity. Conversations that drain ambition. And that's uncomfortable, but comfort has never built wealth. Which brings us to the fifth and final mindset shift. And this one changes everything, because it determines whether you stay consistent or fall back into old patterns. It's about responsibility. Radical, uncomfortable responsibility. Friend, write your opinion on this topic in the comments. Do you agree with us or not? I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Chapter 6, Shift number 5, Radical Responsibility. This is the shift most people avoid because it removes comfort, it removes excuses, it removes blame, and it leaves you alone with one undeniable truth. Your life is your responsibility, not your parents, not your boss, not the economy, not the algorithm, not the government, not your past, not your trauma, not your circumstances. Those factors may influence you, but they do not define your ceiling. Millionaires adopt radical responsibility. They ask, even in failure, what was my part in this? Not to shame themselves, but to reclaim control. Because if it's someone else's fault, you are powerless. If it's partly your responsibility, you have leverage. Here's the fifth punchline. Blame feels relieving. Responsibility builds power. When a deal fails, they evaluate communication. When income drops, they evaluate value creation. When relationships strain, they evaluate leadership. They don't default to victimhood, they default to growth. Now, pause. Think about your last frustration. Did you immediately look outward or inward? Radical responsibility doesn't mean self-condemnation. It means self-ownership. It means saying, if something in my life isn't working, I will improve the variable I control. That variable is you, your skills, your mindset, your habits, your standards. In 2025, external chaos is everywhere. Economic shifts, technological disruption, cultural noise. You cannot control those waves, but you can control your preparation. You can control your adaptability. You can control your learning velocity. And those three alone separate the stagnant from the scalable. Let's go deeper. Victim thinking sounds like this. No one gave me a chance. People like me don't get ahead. The system is rigged. It's too late. It's too hard. Ownership thinking sounds like this. How can I increase my value? Who can I learn from? What skill am I missing? What environment must I change? What habit must I eliminate? Different language, different future. Now, understand this clearly. Radical responsibility is not about denying injustice. It's about refusing to let injustice dictate your trajectory. Because history shows something powerful. Across cultures, across industries, across generations, those who adopt responsibility outperform those who adopt resentment. Resentment consumes energy. Responsibility channels it. And energy directed intentionally becomes progress. Here's where this becomes deeply personal. There may be parts of your story that hurt, moments that were unfair, situations that were beyond your control. Acknowledge them, but don't build your identity around them. Millionaires build identity around capability, around growth, around possibility, not pain. Pain may shape you, but it does not have to shrink you. Now imagine your next obstacle, a rejection, a failure, a setback. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this teaching me?" That question alone shifts trajectory, because learning compounds, excuses stagnate. And here's something most people never hear. Responsibility also includes your environment. If you surround yourself with people who normalize mediocrity, you will struggle to exceed it. If you consume content that promotes shortcuts, you will struggle to build structure. If you tolerate distractions, you will sabotage focus. Responsibility includes boundaries. Who you listen to, who you follow, who you spend time with, who influences your thinking. And here's a subtle but powerful layer. When you take radical responsibility, you stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for applause. You stop waiting for certainty. You move. Even uncertain, even imperfect, even uncomfortable. Because you understand something profound. No one is coming to rescue you. And that realization is not depressing, it's empowering. Because if no one is coming, you must rise, and rising builds strength. Now here's a powerful reflection. Imagine two versions of you 5 years from now. Version 1 blames, version 2 owns. Version 1 complains, version 2 improves, version 1 waits, version 2 executes. Which version accumulates wealth? Which version attracts opportunity? Which version builds influence? The answer is obvious. But obvious does not mean easy. Radical responsibility requires humility. It requires courage, it requires discipline, and it requires consistency. But when you combine all 5 shifts, identity before income, action before motivation, long-term thinking, valuing time over money, radical responsibility, you create psychological architecture for wealth. Not luck, not hype, architecture. Now let's pause. If this has resonated with you so far, don't just listen passively. Commit. Hit like as a contract with yourself. In the comments, write one shift that challenged you most. Not for validation, for clarity. And if you know someone stuck in employee thinking, share this with them. Because mindset spreads, and so does mediocrity. Choose what you amplify, but we are not finished, because understanding the 5 shifts intellectually is not the same as integrating them. In the next chapters, we're going deeper. We're going to explore how these shifts reshape relationships, how they transform communication, how they influence investment decisions, how they build confidence, and how to avoid the psychological traps that sabotage wealth. Because becoming a millionaire is not a money journey. It's a character evolution, and evolution requires friction. So stay with me. The next chapter will challenge how you think about risk and why avoiding risk is the riskiest move of all. Dear viewer, Share your success story, even if it is small. It can motivate other people to visit the comment section and read it, and it can inspire them. Also, don't be shy about asking questions, and perhaps someone with more experience or someone who has been through this will share the answer. Remember, it is only through communication that people become stronger and better. Thank you. Chapter 7. The Millionaire's Relationship with Risk. Most people believe millionaires love risk. They don't. They love calculated risk. There's a difference. The average person hears risk and imagines gambling, uncertainty, danger, loss. But the wealthy hear risk and think, where is the asymmetry? Where is the upside greater than the downside? Where is the long-term gain worth the short-term discomfort? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Avoiding risk is the riskiest strategy of all, because inflation erodes cash, technology replaces skills, industries evolve. If you stay still long enough, you fall behind. In 2025, this reality is accelerating. AI is writing code, automating design, replacing administrative roles, disrupting entire sectors. The person who refuses to adapt will not stay safe. They will become obsolete. That's not fear. That's fact. Millionaires understand something critical. Risk cannot be eliminated. It can only be managed. You either risk action or you risk regret. You either risk learning or you risk stagnation. You either risk investment or you risk invisibility. Here's your next punchline. Security without growth becomes slow decline. Let that settle. If you cling to what feels safe, you slowly shrink, because markets reward courage aligned with strategy. Now let's break this down practically. There are 3 types of risk. 1. Emotional risk. 2. Financial risk. 3. Identity risk. Most people are terrified of emotional risk. Making the call, launching the product, speaking publicly, raising their price. Why? Because rejection feels painful. But rejection is data, and data builds skill. Millionaires expose themselves to controlled emotional risk repeatedly. They desensitize fear. Next, financial risk. Notice I said calculated. They don't throw money blindly. They research, they study, they diversify, they think long-term. But they understand something powerful. Money sitting idle loses power. Money deployed strategically multiplies. And finally, identity risk. This is the deepest one. Becoming wealthier may require leaving environments that feel familiar. It may require outgrowing relationships. It may require redefining yourself. That feels uncomfortable because humans crave belonging. But belonging in the wrong circle limits expansion. Ask yourself honestly, are you staying small to stay accepted? Are you downplaying ambition to avoid judgment? Are you shrinking to maintain comfort? If so, you are paying the highest risk cost of all, the cost of unrealized potential. Millionaires risk misunderstanding. They risk criticism. They risk being too ambitious. But they refuse to risk becoming average. Now here's the shift. Instead of asking, what if this fails? Ask, what if this works? What if your idea succeeds? What if your skill compounds? What if your investment multiplies? What if your bold move redefines your trajectory? Fear imagines loss. Vision imagines possibility. And where attention goes, action follows. Let's bring this into your life right now. What decision have you delayed because it feels uncertain? Starting a business? Changing careers? Learning a new skill? Investing in mentorship? Having a hard conversation? Every day you delay, you pay an invisible tax. The tax of momentum lost. And momentum is priceless. Now, I'm not telling you to leap blindly. I'm telling you to prepare intelligently. Study the market, build savings, develop skills, create a runway, then move. Millionaires don't jump without a plan, but they do jump when the math makes sense. And here's something few people realize. Courage compounds. The more calculated risks you take, the more resilient you become. The more resilient you become, the more confident you feel. The more confident you feel, the larger opportunities you pursue. It's a loop. But fear compounds too. The more you avoid discomfort, the smaller your world becomes. Now imagine your life 5 years from now. If you chose bold but strategic growth, if you embraced discomfort, if you invested in skill, if you expanded your environment, would you regret it, or would you thank yourself? Millionaires are not fearless. They are forward-moving despite fear. That distinction changes everything. But here's where this becomes even deeper. Because risk without emotional control leads to chaos. And emotional control is the next invisible shift that separates those who scale from those who self-sabotage. Chapter 8. Emotional Control, the Invisible Advantage. You can have the right strategy. You can have the right skills. You can even have the right opportunities. But if you don't control your emotions, you will sabotage everything. This is the invisible advantage of millionaires. Not intelligence, not charisma, emotional regulation, because money magnifies who you already are. If you are impulsive with $1,000, you will be destructive with $1 million. If you panic under small pressure, you will collapse under larger pressure. Wealth does not create character, it exposes it. And here's the truth most people never hear. Emotional instability is expensive. It costs you deals. It costs you partnerships. It costs you reputation. It costs you clarity. In 2025, emotional control is more critical than ever. You're bombarded with headlines, market swings, political noise, algorithmic outrage, comparison culture, and your nervous system is constantly stimulated. If you react to every stimulus, you will never think clearly. Millionaires protect their emotional bandwidth. They do not consume chaos daily. They filter information. They respond instead of react. They detach from noise. Here's your next punchline. The calmer you become, the clearer you think. The clearer you think, the better you decide. And decisions compound. Now let's break this down. There are 3 emotional traps that quietly destroy wealth building. 1. Impulse. 2. Ego. 3. Fear. Impulse leads to overspending, oversharing, overcommitting, overreacting. Ego leads to refusing feedback, defending mistakes, chasing status over strategy. Fear leads to inaction, procrastination, underpricing, playing small. Millionaires train themselves to pause, to observe emotion before acting. That pause is power. When the market dips, they don't panic sell. When a deal falls through, they don't spiral. When criticism appears, they evaluate calmly. Because emotional reactions are temporary, but decisions can be permanent. Now think about your last emotional decision. A purchase you regretted, an argument that escalated, an opportunity you avoided. How much did that cost you? Not just financially, energetically, reputationally, mentally. Here's a shift you can apply immediately. When you feel intense emotion, wait. Don't send the message. Don't make the purchase. Don't respond immediately. Create space. Space allows logic to catch up. Millionaires create space. They don't let urgency dictate action. And here's something deeper. Emotional control also affects relationships. If you're building wealth, you will encounter disagreement, negotiation, conflict. If you cannot stay composed, you will struggle to lead. Leadership requires emotional steadiness. People follow stability, not volatility. Now imagine this. You're negotiating a contract. The other party pressures you, attempts to intimidate, raises their voice. If you mirror that energy, you lose leverage. If you remain calm, you gain control. Calm signals confidence. Confidence signals value. Value attracts respect. Emotional maturity is not softness. It's strength under pressure. And here's the paradox. The stronger you become internally, the less you need external validation. And when you no longer need validation, you make cleaner decisions. You stop chasing applause. You stop defending ego. You start focusing on outcomes. This shift alone can change your financial trajectory because ego-driven decisions are expensive. Now let's go even deeper. Emotional control includes delayed gratification. Choosing long-term gain over short-term pleasure, investing instead of splurging, learning instead of lounging, practicing instead of performing prematurely. Every time you delay gratification, you strengthen identity. Every time you give in impulsively, you weaken discipline. It's not about perfection. It's about pattern. Patterns shape outcomes, and outcomes reinforce identity. Now here's the reflective moment. How do you respond to stress? Do you escape into distraction? Do you overspend? Do you procrastinate? Or do you lean into discipline? Your response to stress predicts your wealth ceiling, because building wealth involves uncertainty, and uncertainty triggers emotion. If you cannot manage uncertainty, you cannot manage growth. So begin training calmness through meditation, through journaling, through physical training, through silence, through reflection. Build internal stability, because the external world will not stabilize for you. And here's the beautiful truth. When you master emotion, you unlock clarity. When you unlock clarity, you make smarter investments. You choose better partners. You negotiate stronger deals. You think strategically instead of reactively. Emotional control is invisible, but its results are visible everywhere. Now that we've explored identity, action, time, responsibility, risk, and emotion, we must confront another invisible layer, one that quietly limits income without you noticing. It's not about effort. It's not about talent. It's about environment. And the environment you tolerate may be determining your ceiling. Chapter 9. Your environment is your ceiling. You can have ambition. You can have discipline. You can have strategy. But if your environment contradicts your growth, you will constantly feel resistance. Here's a truth that may sting. Your current environment is either accelerating you or slowly shrinking you. There is no neutral. The people you speak to daily, the content you consume, the standards around you, the expectations in your circle, they are shaping you, whether you notice or not. Millionaires are intentional about proximity. They understand something most people underestimate. Beliefs are contagious. Standards are contagious. Ambition is contagious. And so is mediocrity. If everyone around you thinks $80,000 a year is more than enough, your mind will anchor there. If everyone around you avoids investing, you will hesitate. If everyone around you fears risk, you will justify stagnation. It's not because you are weak. It's because humans adapt. We normalize what we repeatedly see. Now pause. Look at your 5 closest influences, not just friends, influences. Who do you speak to the most? Who do you follow online? Who do you listen to? What is their financial mindset? Are they expanding or are they surviving? Here's your next punchline. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your environment. Goals are intentions, environment is structure, and structure wins. In 2025, environment is no longer just physical, it's digital. The algorithm feeds you based on your attention. If you scroll drama, you receive more drama. If you scroll wealth-building content, you receive more insight. Your feed becomes your framework. And your framework shapes your focus. So be honest. Is your digital environment aligned with your financial goals? Or is it numbing your ambition? Millionaires curate their environment. They join rooms where they are the smallest. They seek mentorship. They attend events that stretch them. They read books that challenge them. They expose themselves to conversations that elevate them. Why? Because elevation requires exposure. You cannot think beyond what you have seen. You cannot aspire beyond what you have witnessed. Exposure expands possibility. Possibility fuels action. Action compounds into wealth. Now, here's something deeper. Environment is not only about people, it's about standards. Do you tolerate laziness in yourself? Do you allow excuses? Do you permit distraction? The standards you allow internally matter as much as the people externally. Because even if you change rooms, if you keep old standards, you recreate old results. So ask yourself, where do I need to upgrade my environment? Is it my friend circle, my work setting, my digital consumption, my habits? Sometimes growth requires relocation. Sometimes it requires recalibration. And sometimes it requires boundaries. Boundaries are uncomfortable, but without them, your ambition leaks. Now imagine this. You spend 1 year intentionally upgrading your environment. You attend higher-level events. You invest in mentorship. You surround yourself with builders. You reduce exposure to negativity. You increase exposure to excellence. Do you think your thinking would stay the same? Of course not. Your thinking would stretch. Your language would shift. Your expectations would expand. And expanded expectation often leads to expanded income. Millionaires do not wait to feel ready for bigger rooms. They enter them. They feel uncomfortable. They observe. They adapt. And they grow. Discomfort is tuition. And tuition builds capacity. Now let's take this even further. What if the environment you need to change is internal? The voice in your head, the self-talk, the narrative. If your internal dialogue constantly says, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, that's for other people. You will sabotage opportunity. You must change that environment too. Replace doubt with data. Replace fear with preparation. Replace hesitation with action. Because the most powerful environment you inhabit is your mind. And that leads us into the next chapter. Because once you upgrade environment, you must confront something even more subtle, the ceiling of belief. And belief, if left unexamined, quietly limits income. Chapter 10. The belief barrier. There is a ceiling you cannot see. It has no walls, no locks, no alarms. Yet it stops more people from becoming wealthy than lack of skill ever could. That ceiling is belief. Not motivational belief, not surface-level affirmation, deep, structural belief about what is possible for you. Here is the uncomfortable truth. You do not earn beyond what you believe you deserve. You do not sustain beyond what you believe you can handle. And you do not attempt what you believe is unrealistic. Belief defines range. Range defines action. Action defines income. Now pause for a moment. When you think about earning $1 million, what happens internally? Excitement? Curiosity? Or tension? Doubt? A quiet voice saying, "That's unrealistic"? That reaction is your belief boundary, and most people never question it. They inherit beliefs about money from childhood. Money is hard to make. Rich people are greedy. We're not that type of family. Be realistic. Stay stable. Those phrases may sound harmless, but they create invisible ceilings. If you believe wealth requires exploitation, you will subconsciously avoid it. If you believe money corrupts, you will resist expansion. If you believe success means isolation, you will choose belonging over growth. Millionaires do something radically different. They audit their beliefs. They ask, where did this idea come from? Is it factual or inherited? Is it protective or limiting? Here's your next punchline. Your income grows to the size of your belief. If you believe 6 figures is extraordinary, you may plateau there. If you believe 7 figures is possible with discipline, your brain begins searching for strategy. Belief activates creativity. Belief expands vision. Belief influences risk tolerance. Belief shapes persistence. And persistence compounds. Let's get practical. Write down your current income. Now write down what you believe is realistically possible in the next 5 years. Is there a massive gap, or is your expectation modest? Your expectation reveals your belief boundary. Now ask yourself, why that number? Why not double it? Why not triple it? What makes you think that's unrealistic? Often, the answer is not data. It's narrative. A narrative formed by environment, by comparison, by past performance. But past performance is not permanent identity. It is simply prior evidence, and evidence can be replaced. Millionaires upgrade belief by upgrading exposure. They study people who achieved what they want. They analyze pathways. They reverse engineer results. They immerse themselves in examples, because exposure shifts belief. If you've never met someone earning 7 figures, it feels abstract. If you spend time around 5 of them, it feels normal. Normal changes expectation. Expectation changes effort. Effort changes outcome. Now here's something even deeper. Belief also affects negotiation. If you don't believe you deserve higher pay, you won't ask. If you don't believe your service is premium, you will underprice. If you don't believe your time is valuable, you will overspend it. Self-worth and net worth are connected, not emotionally, behaviorally. Your pricing reflects your belief. Your boundaries reflect your belief. Your risk tolerance reflects your belief. So how do you raise belief? Through repetition of proof, small wins, consistent action. Skill acquisition. Every time you execute and see progress. Belief strengthens. Confidence is earned evidence, and earned evidence rewrites narrative. Now imagine this. For the next 12 months, you act as if higher income is not fantasy, but strategy. You study markets. You build skills. You network intentionally. You invest in education. You treat growth as inevitable. What happens? Your brain begins solving at a higher level. You stop asking, "Can I?" and start asking, "How do I?" That shift is everything. Millionaires operate from how. How do we scale? How do we automate? How do we add value? How do we expand margin? How do we increase leverage? They do not dwell on if, because if creates hesitation. How creates action. Now let's confront another layer. Belief also affects patience. If you believe wealth is possible, you tolerate delayed gratification. If you secretly believe it won't work, you quit early. Many people fail not because the plan was wrong, but because belief was weak. They executed for 90 days. Results were slow. Doubt resurfaced. They stopped. Millionaires assume compounding takes time. They expect slow beginnings. They trust the curve. And trust sustains effort. So here is your reflective question. Do you truly believe you can build significant wealth? Or are you entertaining the idea? Be honest. Because half belief leads to half action. And half action leads to half results. If belief is weak, strengthen it with data. Study case studies. Learn from operators. Read biographies. Understand patterns. Replace mythology with methodology. Wealth is rarely magic. It is structure plus persistence. And once belief locks in, action accelerates. But belief alone is not enough, because even strong belief can collapse under pressure. And that brings us to the next shift. The millionaire's relationship with failure. Because if you misinterpret failure, you will misinterpret growth. The topic of this video was chosen by you, our viewers. In most of our videos, we remind you that you can write interesting topics you would like to hear about in the comments. We take the most interesting ones into consideration. Today's video topic was suggested by one of our viewers in the comments. Laylee, thank you for this theme. If you want us to cover a topic that interests you, write it in the comments. This will help us make videos on topics that are interesting to you, our viewers. Chapter 11. Failure as feedback, not identity. Most people are not afraid of hard work. They are afraid of failure, not the event, the meaning. Failure, to the average mind, is proof. Proof that you are not talented enough, not smart enough, not disciplined enough, not cut out for more. But to a millionaire mind, failure is data, nothing more, nothing less. Here is the reframe that changes everything. Failure is information about strategy, not a verdict about identity. Let that settle, because the way you interpret failure determines whether you expand or shrink. If you see failure as evidence that you are incapable, you retreat. If you see failure as evidence that the approach needs refinement, you adjust. And adjustment compounds. Think about this. Every major breakthrough in business, investing, or skill building is built on iterations. Launch, feedback, refine, relaunch, scale. No one scales perfectly on the first attempt. Yet most people expect themselves to. And when the first attempt underperforms, they internalize it. They say, I guess this isn't for me. I'm not built for this. Maybe I should play it safe. That single interpretation kills momentum. Millionaires assume friction. They assume resistance. They assume mistakes. They build psychological tolerance for it because they understand something critical. If you want uncommon results, you must survive uncommon pressure. Now let's look at this practically. You start a business. It struggles for 6 months. Revenue is inconsistent. You question yourself. Average response. Shut it down. Return to comfort. Millionaire response. What is the data saying? Is the offer weak? Is the marketing unclear? Is the audience wrong? Is pricing misaligned? They separate ego from outcome, and that separation is powerful because ego interprets feedback as attack. Logic interprets feedback as instruction, and wealth grows under logic. Now think about your own life. What failure still lingers in your identity? A failed relationship? A business attempt? An exam? A missed opportunity? Have you attached it to who you are, or have you extracted the lesson? Here's your next punchline. If you personalize failure, you paralyze growth, because personalizing creates shame. Shame creates avoidance. Avoidance creates stagnation. But depersonalizing creates clarity. Clarity creates strategy. Strategy creates progress. Now here's something deeper. Failure tolerance also determines innovation. In 2025, markets evolve rapidly. What worked last year may not work this year. If you fear experimentation, you will fear adaptation. And if you fear adaptation, you will fear scale. Millionaires test constantly. They try new channels, new pricing models, new systems. Some fail, but they expect that because experimentation is expansion. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. The reason most people never reach significant wealth is not lack of opportunity. It's lack of resilience. They quit too early. They interpret temporary struggle as permanent limitation. But compounding requires endurance, and endurance requires reframing setbacks. Imagine if every setback you faced, you treated as curriculum, a training module, instead of a verdict. How different would your trajectory be? Now let's go even deeper. Failure is not only external, it's internal. Breaking your own promises, skipping routines, avoiding discipline. Those micro failures shape identity too. But instead of spiraling into guilt, millionaires reset quickly. They don't let one bad day become a bad month. They interrupt downward spirals early because they know momentum matters. Now ask yourself, when something goes wrong, do you pause and adjust, or do you emotionally react and withdraw? Your answer predicts your ceiling. Now imagine this. You build a habit of quick recovery. You treat mistakes as information. You refine instead of retreat. Over time, your tolerance for challenge increases, and with increased tolerance, you pursue larger opportunities. This is why millionaires appear confident. It's not arrogance. It's experience surviving failure. They've seen mistakes before. They've corrected course before. They trust their ability to adapt. And that trust builds calmness under pressure. Now here's your shift. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" ask, "What will I learn?" Instead of saying, "This didn't work," say, "This version didn't work." Small language shifts, massive psychological impact, because language shapes perception, and perception shapes behavior. Now we must go deeper still, because even with strong belief, even with resilience, even with emotional control, there is another trap that limits growth. The trap of short-term thinking. And if you think in months instead of decades, you will never build what compounding requires. Chapter 12. Thinking in decades, not days. Most people sabotage their wealth not with bad decisions, but with short timelines. They measure progress weekly. They judge strategy monthly, they panic quarterly, and they quit yearly. Millionaires think differently, they think in decades. And that single shift rewires everything. Here's your next punchline. Short-term thinking creates pressure. Long-term thinking creates power. Let that sink in. When you think in weeks, every obstacle feels urgent. Every dip feels catastrophic. Every delay feels like failure. But when you think in decades, fluctuations become noise, delays become adjustments, and obstacles become chapters. In 2025, the world trains you to think short-term. Instant notifications, instant opinions, instant gratification, instant results. The algorithm rewards immediacy, but wealth rewards patience. Let's break this down practically. You invest in a skill. After 30 days, no dramatic income spike. Short-term thinker. Maybe this isn't worth it. Long-term thinker. This is seed planting. You launch a product. First month is slow. Short-term thinker. Failure. Long-term thinker. Iteration phase. You invest in the market. It dips 15%. Short-term thinker. Panic. Long-term thinker. Discount. See the difference? Same event, different timeline, different interpretation, different outcome. Now here's the truth most people ignore. Compounding looks boring at the beginning. Whether it's skill, money, reputation, health, or network. The first year is invisible. The second year is subtle. The third year becomes noticeable. By year 5, it looks lucky. But it wasn't luck. It was time plus discipline. Millionaires understand the compounding curve. They trust it. They expect it. They build systems that benefit from it. Now let me ask you something honestly. Are you building for this year or for the next 10? If your decisions are based only on immediate reward, you will constantly restart. And restarting kills compounding. Consistency over time creates exponential results, but only if you stay in the game. Now let's go deeper. Short-term thinking also affects relationships. You want quick validation, quick recognition, quick credibility. But credibility is earned slowly. Trust is built gradually. Reputation compounds through reliability. Millionaires understand that patience is strategic. They are not passive. They are patient with direction. And that's different. Patience is not waiting. It is executing consistently without demanding instant applause. Here's a powerful shift. Instead of asking, how can I make money fast? Ask, how can I build something that pays me for years? That question changes behavior. Fast money often requires constant effort. Long-term leverage requires upfront effort with downstream return. Now imagine this clearly. For the next 10 years, you commit to one primary skill. You refine it daily. You study it deeply. You adapt with market shifts. Do you think you would remain average? Impossible. Depth alone creates differentiation, but most people pivot every 6 months. They chase trends. They abandon projects. They reset momentum because they're thinking in quarters, not decades. Now here's something powerful. Long-term thinking also reduces anxiety. When you zoom out, today's stress shrinks. This month's setback becomes minor. This year's dip becomes temporary. Perspective stabilizes emotion, and stable emotion supports strategic decisions. Millionaires zoom out constantly. They look at 5-year arcs, 10-year arcs, 20-year arcs, because they understand the market rewards those who endure, not those who sprint and collapse. Now let's bring this back to you. If you applied long-term thinking starting today, what would change? Would you still overspend impulsively? Would you still skip learning? Would you still avoid investing? Would you still procrastinate skill building? Probably not. Because when you visualize your 10-year self, you begin protecting them. Long-term thinking creates responsibility to your future identity. Now here's the hard truth. Short-term thinking feels exciting. Long-term thinking feels disciplined. Excitement fades. Discipline compounds. And compounding builds millionaires. But there is still another shift beneath this. Because even if you think long-term, if you are constantly reacting instead of designing, you will always feel behind. And that leads us to the next powerful transformation, the shift from consumer to creator. Because wealth flows toward creators, not just consumers. Chapter 13, from consumer to creator. There is a silent divide in this world, not between rich and poor, not between educated and uneducated, but between consumers and creators. Consumers absorb, creators produce. Consumers scroll, creators build. Consumers react, creators design. And wealth flows in the direction of creation. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If most of your time is spent consuming, you are strengthening someone else's asset. Every platform you scroll, every video you binge, every product you buy impulsively, you are fueling someone else's leverage. Now pause. Look at your average day. How many hours do you consume? And how many do you create? Content, ideas, strategy, assets, skills, systems. Millionaires obsess over output, not because consumption is useless, but because creation compounds. Here's your next punchline. Consumers pay. Creators get paid. Let that land. You can learn endlessly. But if you never apply, your knowledge remains dormant. You can watch business videos for years, but until you launch something, you are still a spectator. Creation is uncomfortable. It exposes you. It demands skill. It invites feedback. But it builds leverage, and leverage builds wealth. Now in 2025, this shift is more powerful than ever. AI tools allow you to design, automate, scale, market, write, build. The barriers to creation have collapsed, but the discipline to create remains rare. Most people consume motivation. Few convert it into action, and that conversion is the millionaire mindset. Now let's break this down practically. Instead of asking, what can I watch tonight? Ask, what can I build tonight? Instead of asking, what's trending? Ask, what value can I produce? Instead of asking, what can I buy? Ask, what asset can I develop? Because assets outlive effort, and effort alone does not scale. Now let's go deeper. Creation is not only about business, it's about mindset. Are you creating opportunities or waiting for them? Are you creating solutions or complaining about problems? Are you creating value or consuming entertainment? Creation requires initiative, and initiative creates differentiation. Most people wait for permission. Millionaires initiate. They pitch ideas. They propose deals. They launch experiments. They write. They publish. They design. They solve. They don't ask for perfect timing. They act. Now imagine this clearly. For the next year, you allocate 1 hour per day to creation, skill building, content, product development, networking, idea generation. That's 365 focused hours. Do you think your trajectory would change? Absolutely, because consistent creation builds reputation. Reputation builds opportunity. Opportunity builds income. Now here's the hidden benefit. Creation builds confidence. When you build something from nothing, you expand belief. You see yourself differently. You move from passive to proactive. And proactive individuals control their narrative. Consumers adapt to the market. Creators influence it. Now let's confront something uncomfortable. Consumption feels easy. Creation feels risky, because when you create, you can fail publicly. But when you consume, you stay invisible. And invisibility feels safe. But safety does not scale. Here's your reflective question. Are you spending more time watching success or building it? If the answer stings, good. Awareness precedes change. Now here's the next layer. Creation is tied to value, and value determines income. If you want to earn more, you must create more value, not more hours, more value. That could be a skill that solves a problem, a service that increases efficiency, a product that enhances experience, a system that saves time. Value attracts money. Money chases solutions, and solutions are created, not consumed. Now imagine this shift. You begin seeing every problem as opportunity, every frustration as product idea, every inefficiency as leverage. That lens alone separates you, because while others complain, you build, and builders get paid. But here's something even more critical. Creation demands focus, and focus demands elimination, which brings us to the next transformation. The millionaire's relationship with distraction, because you cannot create at a high level while living in constant interruption. Chapter 14. The Discipline of Focus. You cannot build wealth in fragments. You cannot create leverage in distraction. You cannot design a high-level life with a low-level attention span. And yet, attention is the most attacked resource in 2025. Notifications, messages, endless scrolling, breaking news, short-form dopamine loops. Your mind is constantly pulled outward, and whatever controls your attention controls your future. Here's your next punchline. Distraction is the tax you pay for not deciding who you want to become. Let that sit with you, because distraction is rarely accidental. It is often avoidance. Avoidance of deep work, avoidance of difficult tasks, avoidance of strategic thinking, avoidance of silence. Millionaires treat focus like currency. They guard it aggressively. They protect mornings. They batch communication. They schedule deep work. They eliminate unnecessary noise, because they understand something most people ignore. Deep work creates deep value. Shallow work creates shallow results. Now ask yourself honestly, how many hours per day are you truly focused? Not half-focused, not multitasking, truly immersed. If the answer is low, that is not a character flaw. It is a design flaw. Focus is built, not wished for. Now let's break this down practically. Every time you switch tasks, your brain pays a reset cost. Every notification fractures momentum. Every interruption weakens depth, and depth is where innovation lives. Depth is where clarity forms. Depth is where leverage is built. Millionaires schedule uninterrupted blocks. No phone, no email, no noise, just execution. And in those hours, they create assets. They design systems. They refine strategy. They think. And thinking is undervalued in modern culture because thinking is invisible. But invisible work often creates visible wealth. Now here's something powerful. Focus is not only about eliminating distraction, it's about choosing direction. If you are unclear about what matters, you will default to what is easy, and easy rarely compounds. So ask yourself, what is the single most valuable skill I can build right now? What is the highest leverage task I can execute this week? What project, if completed, would move my income needle significantly? Then protect time for that, not casually, intentionally. Because here's the truth. You don't find time, you allocate it. Millionaires allocate time based on a priority, not urgency. Urgent tasks scream. Important tasks whisper. And most people respond to noise instead of strategy. Now imagine this clearly. For the next 90 days, you commit to 2 hours of uninterrupted deep work per day. No excuses, no scrolling, no context switching, just focused building. Do you believe your trajectory would remain the same? Impossible, because concentrated effort accelerates growth. Now here's the deeper layer. Distraction is addictive. It gives quick dopamine, quick novelty, quick relief. But that relief is expensive because it replaces progress. Every scroll session trades potential for stimulation. Every mindless hour trades leverage for entertainment. And entertainment does not build assets. Now, this doesn't mean you eliminate enjoyment. It means you earn it. Millionaires design reward after execution, not before. They complete the difficult task first, then relax intentionally. That sequence builds discipline, and discipline builds confidence. Confidence builds risk tolerance. Risk tolerance builds wealth. It's all connected. Now let's address something subtle. Some people say, I work better under pressure. Often that's not productivity. That's procrastination disguised as adrenaline. Real mastery is calm focus, calm execution, predictable output. Millionaires do not rely on panic energy. They rely on systems. Systems remove friction. Systems create rhythm, and rhythm sustains performance. Now here's your reflective moment. What distracts you most? Be specific. Is it social media, messaging, gaming, endless research, unstructured work? Identify it. Name it. Then reduce it by 50%, not forever, just for the next month. Watch what happens. Clarity increases. Energy stabilizes. Confidence rises, and output improves. Because where focus goes, results follow. Now we move deeper. Because even with focus, even with discipline, even with belief, there is one final mindset shift that ties everything together. It's not about hustle. It's not about speed. It's about identity alignment. Because the ultimate transformation happens when success stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like who you are. Chapter 15, Identity Alignment, Becoming the Person Who Wins at the Highest Level. Wealth is not about strategy. It is not about hustle. It is not even about intelligence. It is about alignment. Because when your habits, standards, beliefs, and actions align with the identity of a builder, success stops feeling forced. It starts feeling natural. Here's the final deep shift. Millionaires do not try to act wealthy. They act like disciplined, focused, strategic individuals, and wealth becomes the byproduct. Read that again in your mind. They focus on becoming the kind of person who creates value consistently, and value attracts money. If you constantly force yourself to behave correctly, it drains you. But if you redesign your identity, behavior becomes automatic. This is the difference between motivation and embodiment. Most people try to perform success. Millionaires embody it. Now let's break this down clearly. If you see yourself as someone who finishes what they start, invests consistently, thinks long-term, controls emotion, creates value daily, then those behaviors require less friction because they match identity. But if you still see yourself as someone trying to get better, you will constantly negotiate. Identity removes negotiation. Here's your next punchline. When success matches identity, effort decreases and results increase. Alignment reduces resistance. Now ask yourself something honest. Who are you at your core? Not your job title, not your income, not your social media profile. Who are you in moments when no one is watching? Are you disciplined? Are you intentional? Are you proactive? Or are you reactive, distracted, hesitant? That private identity shapes public outcome. Millionaires win in private first. Private discipline becomes public success. Now let's go deeper. Alignment also affects confidence. When your actions match your standards, self-trust grows. When self-trust grows, risk feels manageable. When risk feels manageable, opportunity expands. It all loops back to identity. Now imagine this. You commit to a new identity. I am a disciplined investor. I am a focused creator. I am a strategic thinker. I am emotionally stable under pressure, not as affirmation, but as responsibility. If that is who you are, how do you behave today? Do you scroll for 2 hours? Or do you allocate that time to building? Do you overspend? Or do you invest? Do you procrastinate? Or do you execute? Identity answers instantly, and that clarity simplifies decisions. Millionaires simplify decisions by aligning them with identity. They don't debate endlessly. They ask, what would the disciplined version of me do? And they act accordingly. Now here's something powerful. Identity alignment also removes envy. When you know who you are becoming, comparison loses power. You are not racing. You are compounding, and compounding is individual. You don't need someone else's timeline. You need your own consistency. Now let's address something subtle. You may fear fully stepping into a new identity because growth separates, because ambition changes conversations, because discipline alters routines, because success demands responsibility. But remaining misaligned is more painful. When you know you can do more, but choose less, internal tension builds, and that tension is expensive. Alignment removes tension. It creates clarity. Clarity builds momentum. Momentum builds results. Now, here is your reflective question. If your future millionaire self walked into your room right now, would they recognize your habits, or would they shake their head? That question is not for shame. It is for alignment. Because you do not become wealthy in one leap. You evolve into it through identity, one disciplined day at a time. Now imagine 5 years of identity alignment, 5 years of consistent investment, 5 years of skill building, 5 years of emotional control, 5 years of focused creation, 5 years of long-term thinking. Do you believe that version of you remains average? Impossible, because identity drives repetition, and repetition drives compounding. Now, we arrive at something critical. This entire journey has not been about tactics. It has been about internal transformation. Because tactics without identity collapse. Identity without tactics evolves strategy naturally. And that leads us into the final integration, the moment where all 5 shifts converge. Please like and subscribe if you want a better future for your children, your family, and yourself. It's very difficult to achieve success today, but I'm sure you'll succeed. All you have to do is learn and discover new things. Chapter 16, Integration, when the shifts converge. You've now walked through the 5 core mindset shifts that create millionaires. Not tactics, not hacks, not hype. Shifts, deep internal recalibrations. Let's bring them together. First, identity over income. Second, ownership over excuses. Third, long-term over short-term. Fourth, creator over consumer. Fifth, alignment over performance. Individually, each shift is powerful. Together, they are transformational. Because wealth is rarely the result of one breakthrough. It is the result of aligned systems. Identity shapes action. Action shapes skill. Skill creates value. Value attracts income. Income funds leverage. Leverage accelerates compounding. And compounding builds freedom. Now here is the truth that most people never internalize. Millionaire status is not built in your bank account first. It is built in your thinking first. Your bank account eventually reflects your patterns. If your patterns are scattered, your income will be unstable. If your patterns are disciplined, your income will be predictable. If your patterns are strategic, your income will scale. Now pause for a moment. Close your eyes if you need to. Imagine the version of you who fully integrates these 5 shifts. They wake up with clarity. They execute without negotiation. They protect focus. They create daily. They invest consistently. They respond calmly under pressure. They think in decades. They upgrade environment. They refine belief. They recover quickly from failure. That person is not hypothetical. That person is pattern-based, and patterns can be built. Here's your next punchline. Wealth is a reflection of repeated decisions, not rare moments. Let that anchor in your mind, because most people wait for a dramatic moment, a lucky break, a massive opportunity. But millionaires are built in ordinary days, quiet execution, focused mornings, disciplined evenings, strategic thinking sessions, unseen preparation. Ordinary days stacked repeatedly become extraordinary results. Now let's talk about pressure, because integration creates responsibility. When you understand these shifts, you can no longer pretend you don't. Awareness removes excuses, and responsibility can feel heavy. But it is also empowering, because once you accept that your trajectory is largely shaped by mindset, you regain control. You stop waiting. You start building. Now here's something important. You do not need to master everything at once. Integration is progressive. Choose one shift to strengthen first. Maybe it's focus. Maybe it's ownership. Maybe it's long-term thinking. Maybe it's creation. Maybe it's identity alignment. Start there. Stack consistency. Then expand. This is not about intensity. It is about sustainability. Because intensity burns. Sustainability compounds. Now imagine this clearly. For the next year, you commit to investing in your skill monthly, protecting 2 hours of deep work daily, tracking finances weekly, studying wealth strategy consistently, surrounding yourself with growth-oriented people. Do you believe your life would remain the same? Impossible, because trajectory shifts with disciplined input. Now let's confront something uncomfortable. You may feel inspired right now, motivated, clear, but motivation fades. So how do you protect this transformation? You anchor it in routine. Create non-negotiables. Morning routine aligned with focus, weekly financial review, monthly skill audit, quarterly goal recalibration, annual strategic reset. Systems remove reliance on mood, and systems build millionaires. Now here's the deeper layer. You will face resistance from yourself, from others, from circumstance. Growth always invites friction, but friction builds strength. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you reinforce identity. Every time you invest instead of consume, you reinforce ownership. Every time you think long-term instead of reacting, you reinforce patience. These micro decisions define macro results. Now imagine 5 years of integration, 5 years of aligned habits, 5 years of strategic decisions, 5 years of disciplined investment, 5 years of calculated risk, 5 years of creation, 5 years of emotional control, 5 years of environment upgrades, 5 years of belief expansion. The version of you at that point is unrecognizable, and not because of luck, because of choice. Repeated daily. Now here is the final integration truth. The 5 mindset shifts do not create millionaires overnight. They create individuals who are statistically inevitable. Inevitable growth, inevitable skill, inevitable leverage, inevitable compounding, inevitable expansion. And inevitability is more powerful than intensity. Now take a breath, because we are about to enter the final chapter, the one that determines whether this audiobook becomes inspiration or transformation. Chapter 17, The Line in the Sand. There comes a moment in every serious transformation where information is no longer the issue, clarity is no longer the issue, understanding is no longer the issue. Decision is. You now know the 5 mindset shifts that create millionaires. You understand identity. You understand ownership. You understand long-term thinking. You understand creation. You understand alignment. So now the only question left is this: will you live them? Because here's the truth most people avoid. Awareness without action becomes self-deception. You can listen to audiobooks for years. You can study wealth psychology endlessly. You can analyze strategy deeply. But if your daily behavior remains unchanged, nothing changes. Here's your next punchline. The gap between knowing and doing is where potential dies. And that gap is invisible. It feels harmless. You tell yourself, I'll start Monday, I'll implement next month. I just need a little more clarity. But clarity without execution becomes comfort. And comfort is seductive. So this is your line in the sand moment, not dramatic, not loud, quiet, intentional. A decision that says, I will no longer admire discipline. I will practice it. I will no longer watch creators. I will create. I will no longer blame environment. I will upgrade it. I will no longer think in weeks. I will think in years. I will no longer perform success. I will embody it. That declaration is internal, but its effects become external. Now imagine this clearly. You wake up tomorrow, and instead of reacting, you execute. You protect your focus. You invest in skill. You track your money. You move your body. You study markets. You build something, not because you feel inspired, but because this is who you are becoming. Day 1, then day 2, then day 30, then day 100, and suddenly, your internal narrative shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying. You see yourself as someone building. And that identity shift is irreversible. Now let's confront something deeper. You will have moments of doubt, moments of fatigue, moments where old habits whisper loudly. But here's the key. Do not require perfection. Require persistence. Perfection creates pressure. Persistence creates momentum. If you miss a day, reset the next. If you make a mistake, refine the approach. If you feel discouraged, zoom out. Think in decades. Because the long-term thinker never panics over short-term noise. Now here is something powerful. Most people underestimate how quickly identity can shift with consistency. 30 days of discipline changes self-trust. 90 days changes confidence. 1 year changes trajectory. 5 years changes status. And 10 years changes legacy. This is not motivational exaggeration. It is behavioral mathematics. Now imagine 10 years of aligned execution, 10 years of investing, 10 years of skill mastery, 10 years of focused creation, 10 years of emotional control, 10 years of environment upgrades, 10 years of calculated risk. You would not just be wealthier, you would be transformed. And transformation is the real reward. Because money amplifies character. So build character first. Now here is your final reflective moment. If you do nothing differently after this audiobook, what will your life look like in 5 years? Picture it. Same habits, same routines, same distractions, same environment. Is that acceptable? If not, then this is the moment. Not next week, not next month. Now, choose one non-negotiable, just one habit aligned with your future identity. Protect it fiercely for the next 30 days. Build evidence, build belief, build momentum, then stack another. This is how millionaires are built. Not through hype, through habits. Now here is something I want you to feel deeply. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not incapable. You are either aligned or you are distracted, and alignment can begin today. Now, if this journey resonated with you, If one of these shifts hit harder than expected, don't let this fade into passive inspiration. Hit like as a personal contract with yourself, not for the algorithm, for accountability. In the comments, declare the one mindset shift you are committing to: identity, ownership, long-term thinking, creation, alignment. Write it. Make it visible. Because public declaration strengthens private discipline. And if you know someone who believes wealth is reserved for the lucky, share this with them, because mindset spreads and communities rise together. And if you are serious about continuing this journey, subscribe, not to consume passively, but to reinforce intentional growth. This is not entertainment. This is evolution. Now let this final truth settle inside you. Millionaires are not created by chance. They are created by repeated, aligned decisions made when no one is watching. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need flawless execution. You need commitment, quiet, consistent, unapologetic commitment, 5 shifts, 1 decision, daily repetition, and one day, the life you once imagined will feel normal, not because you wished for it, but because you built yourself into the person capable of sustaining it. The choice is yours, and it starts now. Chapter 18: The Compounding Effect of Character. Before we close this journey, there is one final layer you must understand. Because everything we've discussed, identity, ownership, long-term thinking, creation, alignment, ultimately feeds into one thing: character. Character is not personality. It is not charisma. It is not image. Character is what you do when convenience invites compromise. Character is what you choose when no one will applaud you. Character is discipline without an audience. And here's the truth: money magnifies character. If you build wealth without strengthening character, you amplify instability. If you build character first, wealth becomes stable. That's why the 5 mindset shifts matter. They are not just wealth strategies, they are character training systems. Ownership builds integrity. Long-term thinking builds patience. Creation builds initiative. Focus builds discipline. Alignment builds self-trust. And self-trust is priceless. Here's your next punchline: your net worth can rise quickly. Your character must rise steadily. Because character determines sustainability. Anyone can spike. Few sustain. Now imagine 2 people who both earn $1 million. Now imagine looking back at this exact moment 1 year from now. You either say, "That audiobook changed my trajectory," or you say, "That was inspiring it for a while." The difference will not be inspiration. It will be implementation. Now, if this journey moved something inside you, do not close this window casually. Anchor it. Hit like as a contract with your future self. Write in the comments which of the 5 shifts you are committing to: identity, ownership, long-term thinking, creation, alignment. Declare it. Because visibility strengthens accountability. And if you want to continue building this mindset consistently, subscribe. Not to collect content, but to reinforce discipline. This is not about entertainment. It's about evolution. And evolution requires repetition. Now let this final truth echo in your mind. The 5 mindset shifts that create millionaires are not reserved for a select few. They are available to anyone willing to live differently than the majority. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You need discipline. You need ownership. You need long-term vision. You need creation. You need alignment. And once those become who you are, wealth stops being a fantasy. It becomes a byproduct. The future will be shaped by those who choose consistency over comfort. The question is simple. Will you? The decision begins now. And the next version of you is waiting on the other side of today's discipline. Choose wisely.